My name is Zoie Jones, and I'm an early childhood education major from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, attending the illustrious Spelman College. Attending Spelman has impacted me in ways I never knew were possible, including the way I talk. Although my institution has had a major impact on my linguistic experience, my grammatical journey does not start at 350 Spelman Lane. Instead, my journey began 20 years ago in a small Maryland town known as Forestville. I was born on October 16, 1998, in the wee hours of the morning to Kevin and Joy Jones. As a child, I cannot remember my language being that important to me. I spoke in ways that I thought were suitable based off how my peers spoke. As I entered elementary school, I can vaguely remember learning basic grammar rules, but never truly being immersed in the subject. As I look back, I believe that this hindered my understanding of grammar now. I don't think I began to truly think about the way I spoke until middle school. My parents always had high aspirations for my future, and I can remember for a long time trying to decide which high-paying career I wanted to pursue. At one point, I grappled between becoming a Supreme Court justice or a child neurologist. I knew that either career would make my family proud of me, and back then, that's all I really cared about. My father and mother made a point to be involved in my academics. I can remember having to show my mother my homework before I turned it in. If I failed to do so, I risked the punishment. I could also expect at least 2 library trips a week. I fell in love with reading during my childhood. When I read, it felt like I was in another world. Reading challenged me to learn new words, and more importantly, it made me a stronger writer. The summer before 6th grade, my whole world felt like it was being uprooted when my mother moved my sisters and I to Philadelphia to live with my grandmother. My grandmother, Joy, is from a Caribbean island known as St. Vincent and the Grenadines. My grandmother showed me how language can have a huge impact on how the world perceives you. At the ripe age of 18 years old, my grandmother decided to leave her small island and immigrate to the United States. She knew that America would provide her a better opportunity to get ahead in life. And my grandmother did just that, working her way up to becoming a nurse. My grandmother would often speak of times when she struggled to be taken seriously because of her Caribbean accent. People would often struggle to understand what she was saying. My mother and my aunt even tell me stories about how they would be ashamed to have their mother come into for parent-teacher conferences because of her thick accent. But my grandmother never has been ashamed. Although some of her Caribbean friends try to hide their accents, my grandmother speaks proudly in her Vincentian tone. She says that her Caribbean heritage is what makes her who she is. So why would she hide her accent? I didn't realize it then, but my grandmother's linguistic experience would have a substantial impact on mine. As I entered middle school, I found myself in an environment with people who did not look like me. My mother believed that in order for me to receive a quality education, I had to attend a predominantly white school. I do not disagree with my mother's logic 100%, but in some ways, I feel like I lost my identity being around people that did not look or talk like me. I felt like I had to change the way that I spoke in order to be friends with my peers. I avoided slang words at all costs and tried to make sure I was always speaking using proper grammar. Some people might say that I, quote, talked white, unquote. Although I attended school with mostly white students, my neighborhood friends were almost all black. My friends spoke with more slang and did not really care about sounding proper. We used words like John and drawlin without second guessing what they meant. The way that they spoke was true to who I was, but I would never dare speak like that at school. This is when I began to understand what code switching was. Looking back, I wish I would have taken lessons from my grandmother into account. I shouldn't have felt like I had to change the way that I spoke just to be comfortable in front of my peers. High school presented a much easier linguistic experience in some ways, but in other ways, I still struggled. My high school experience as a whole made me who I am today, no doubt. I faced obstacles that I thought I could never overcome, all making me stronger along the way. I became more unapologetic about how I spoke. I attended a predominantly black school, so I believed that there was no reason for me to change the way I spoke. I used more slang more frequently and almost rid myself of the way I spoke in middle school, or so I thought. During my junior and senior year, I spent most of my time in scholarship interviews, SAT prep sessions, and college visits. These mostly white settings forced me to use vernacular I didn't even know the meaning of and speak in full sentences. I didn't dare use the words I use with my friends in these settings. I could not risk being viewed as another black girl from Philadelphia. Fast forward almost 2 years, and I'm attending the #1 HBCU in America, Spelman College. Spelman has played a role in my view of linguistics and grammar in several ways. I attend school with girls from cities across America and even outside of America. I have learned a lot of slang words from my sisters that I probably would not have known prior. Spelman has also required me to code switch often. The way that I speak to my professors is not how I speak to faculty members working in other entities of the college. I do not speak to my friends the same way I might talk to someone I'm just working on a project with. And because I work with children, I have to change the way I speak as well. I must make sure that I'm speaking in a way that they can understand. Essentially, I have mastered the art of code switching. But taking Dr. Lana Lockhart's grammar class has made me question if code switching is a good or a bad thing. This class has allowed for me to realize that your intelligence should not be determined by how you talk. It has also shown me that many of the grammar rules that have been created or were done so in a way that does not take into account the linguistic styles of minorities.